What's going on YouTube? Andrew Miller, Shane Black from Hook'emHeadlines.com. We're coming back at y'all today with a look at the updated Texas basketball roster. We're going to kind of give our thoughts on the return of Dillon Mitchell, how he fits into the rotation, what we think the starting lineup looks like right now, and then we can kind of pontificate a little bit on the remaining roster needs. I haven't paid super close attention to the portal lately. I from what I can tell, there's limited movement. Texas is still out there for the grad transfer market, which really can still have some movement until like early to mid July. So we're still probably looking to add one or two more pieces, but yeah, I'll go ahead and say this. I like that Dillon Mitchell returned. It was a surprise to me. I think I had mentioned in a video we had done a few weeks ago that, leading up to the May 31st deadline to withdraw from the NBA draft for players that, it sounded like there was maybe like a 20% chance that Mitchell returned to school, but something clicked for him and he decided to come back. I think it was a good move for him and his draft stock, but what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think it's terrific news. We've seen a lot of these Texas guys like tweener big men, Greg Brown, Jackson Hayes, even Kai Jones after his sophomore year, but they've left for the draft, and then they've kind of been G League guys. Jackson Hayes obviously more run at the NBA level, but that probably would have happened to Dillon Mitchell if he left. So I'm glad he came back. I think it's a win-win for all parties. I think he's going to have a chance to really improve his offensive game, get more touches on that side of the ball this year. We saw what he can do in transition on the defensive end and catching lobs, but it was pretty funny just seeing some of those NBA draft combine videos from like Jonathan Givony of Dillon Mitchell knocking down threes and looking like a completely different jump shooter. And then to have him then enter the draft and get lost in the G League would have been really unfortunate. So hopefully he can translate that back on the 40 acres. I'm excited. I think he's going to have a bigger role. And I did see some news that LaMarcus Aldridge is potentially looking to become a special assistant on this staff. So I think if that happened as well, that would be a great addition for Mitchell because Aldridge, played the power forward for his whole career. And obviously those two guys are different players, but in regard to jump shot and, the little 15 footers, no better guy to learn from than LA. So I think all in all, a win for Texas, and it definitely makes RT and the staff, it allows them to be a little more picky if they're going to add more players because this roster is really starting to come together. And I think you have 9 guys right now who you should feel comfortable throwing in and on the floor night in and night out.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said earlier, I think that Mitchell returning to Texas was a fantastic move for both him and Texas. The LaMarcus Aldridge thing, I think I had seen something about that, but yeah, that would be huge if he could join the staff and not only coach up a guy like Dillon Mitchell, but Zarek Onyemna. I guess could help Brock Cunningham maybe expand his offensive game a little bit, become a little bit more of like a consistent threat, not just like a catch and shoot guy. So, and just a good rebounder. All around, those would be two good, or the one is, and one could be a good thing. I did a whole long article talking about why I like Dillon Mitchell returning, just the small areas of his game that I think could, really be developed and where he could really go to the next level. I'll link that in the description below because that's like a long 1,500-word article. I don't need to dive into each of those individual areas. More broadly, I mean, obviously we talked about it ad nauseum. I would like to see him expand his offensive game. He needs to become more of a threat from beyond 6 or 8 feet from the basket. Like you said, that ability to knock down jump shots, whether it be from 12 feet, 16 feet, or from deep, that's got to be there. Also, I would like to see him be a little bit more of a facilitator from the elbow, from the high key. I think that a lot of the facilitating ability that he showed, a lot of the court vision, passing ability that he showed in high school, that has kind of completely gone away. He averaged less than half an assist per game last season. So, I'll pose this question to you, Shane. And, this can lead us into talking about the lineup. Do you think that Dillon Mitchell could potentially play a role similar to what Timmy Allen did the last couple of seasons, where he could facilitate the offense from inside the arc?
Yeah, so when you were talking about that, that's exactly what I was thinking. Because Allen was that guy who, ran high post to short corner. He'd get the ball, survey the defense, and make the right play. And while I don't think Mitchell can be as good as Allen was at that last season, I do think Allen leaves a massive void that Mitchell can now fill. I mean, with how veteran oriented the roster was last year, D Mitch just kind of filled his role and didn't really go outside of that. And once Texas, started progressing in the season and were really in the hunt for a Big 12 title, and then obviously went on that postseason run, there wasn't really much room for Mitchell to expand out of kind of the role he was cast in, because, RT had his lineup, he had his rotation, and everyone, credit to the team last year, everyone played their role beautifully. But this year, I would expect from the get-go, Mitchell is going to be more aggressive. And like you mentioned, if you look back at his Montverde highlights, he was a pretty decent facilitator. He knows where to go with the ball. He's big enough to pass over people. And I also think that works with his jump shot as well. If he can turn and face, he's very dangerous. So he just has to be more comfortable catching, turning and facing, dissecting the defense, and figuring it out what to do with the ball. But like you see in the NBA today, that's what all big men do. Nikola Jokic being the best. If that double team comes, he finds the open shooter. If not, he's able to, back you down or hit a little one-footed fall away right over you. So I'm not saying Dillon Mitchell has all those tools, but to grow in confidence and have the ability to turn, face, dissect the defense, and is going to be massive. And I think he's going to be put in a lot of those situations this year. At least I'd like to see him put in those situations.
Yeah, like you said, I don't think he's going to be at the level of a facilitator from the elbow, or, running dribble handoff, or, finding someone cutting back door, whatever that be, or cutting on the baseline. Yeah. Allen was not only I wouldn't say elite facilitator from inside the arc, but he was, I would say, in the 80th or 90th percentile among forwards in terms of his ability as a facilitator. Not only that, but he was also a great cutter. He was really good at finding gaps in the defense off ball. That's another area for Dillon Mitchell, but again, let's jump into the lineup conversation here, because I think that this brings up the elephant in the room for me when talking about Dillon Mitchell facilitating the offense. I've seen a lot of people talking about this 3 forward lineup, or 3 big man lineup, where we have Dillon Mitchell, Caden Shedrick, and Dylan Dessou all in the starting 5. I want to nix that conversation. I don't make that decision, but I don't want that to happen.
No.
I don't want us to be the least.
That's going backwards in time right there, doing that.
Yeah, So I brought up this example before. If anyone remembers an old Chicago Bulls team, not old, but from a half decade ago or so, where the Bulls had a backcourt of Rajon Rondo, Jimmy Butler, and Dwayne Wade, where it had literally no ability to space the floor with those 3 guards. That's what Texas would be doing with this 3 forward lineup. Sure, Rondo, Wade, and Butler, all good to great players in their own right, whether they're still playing or not. Same thing with Dillon Mitchell, Caden Shedrick, and Dylan Dessou. I think they're all very talented players in their own right. I would prefer to see maybe stick to the starting front court you had last year with Dessou and Dillon Mitchell. I would be a fan of that over the Shedrick-Dessou front court duo, but even I'd rather have Shedrick and Dessou, and then say Kendall Weaver, Brock Cunningham, whoever that is, maybe another portal player at the 3. That's where I'll start on this whole conversation. I don't know what you're thinking.
So I think, shoe in Tyrese Hunter, Max Asmus is your backcourt.
Yep.
And I think you got to shoe in Dillon Mitchell at one of the forward spots. And from there, I think you fill it out with Cunningham at the 3 and Mitchell at the 4. That's how I would run it, at least to start the season. I think Kendall Weaver has the chance to play his way into the starting lineup. I also think he could just play really well, and I've said this on other shows, but kind of fill that 6-man role similar to what Sir'Jabari Rice did last season. But I think the continuity between having 4 starters being guys from last year's team, as well as a dynamic player like Max A. Smith, who will probably end up being your leading scorer next year and best player. I think that's how I would go, because those 4 guys are going to have a lot of chemistry, and then you add a guy like A. Smith, and I think that lineup's a lot of fun. You can do a lot of different things with A. Smith, Hunter, Cunningham, and even Dessou. You got 4 guys who can knock down the 3 ball. I think Mitchell will have the freedom to, play a lot at the high post in the short corner, because you don't have a guy like Timmy Allen in that lineup. So Cunningham obviously put the ball on the deck too much. So Mitchell can kind of be that guy out of the power forward position. So that would be my 5 that I would run. If Shedrick, pushed his way into the lineup, I think you got to push Mitchell out. I would not play all 3 of those guys at the same time. Very rarely. You can try it in the non-con and just see how it looks, and it might look good against some mid-major level teams who don't have any height. But in general, I don't really see why we would run that at all.
There's just not really much of an advantage either way. Mitchell's a switchable enough defender to the point where he can pretty much cover every position on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, God, no, he's got another offseason in the strength and conditioning program. He might be big enough to defend most 5s that are even some bigger 5s next year, because he's also a smart defender to where he can draw some offensive fouls. Shedrick, unless Shedrick becomes like Brooke Lopez for Texas, I don't know what we're going to be talking. Because, here's what's going to have to happen. I'd hate to keep using the Central Division NBA comparisons here, but the Bucks, their front court worked kind of, because what do they have? Obviously Giannis can play any position he damn well pleases. And then Brooke Lopez is one of the best stretch 5s in the NBA. And then, from there, you can really pair them with a number of different players, because Jay Crowder, Bobby Portis, those guys can stretch the floor. But this is where we're talking about, these 3 guys would have to turn into NBA level versatile bigs, right away next season for this to work. I hope anyone watching this knows that. It's not going to work otherwise, but I like what you said. I think it's interesting, the lineup you mentioned with Cunningham, Hunter, A. Smith, Dessou, and Mitchell. It's weird to think that we would actually have a starting 5 that has 4 players returning from last year's team. Because I think if either of us had said that to each other, even a month ago, I think we would have thought that someone was joking around. Yeah. So I'm not opposed to Cunningham at the 3. Fill some sort of 3-and-D wing role, because he's not your prototypical 3-and-D wing, because he's just not as fluid, but and he picks up too many fouls, is out of control too much. But I do think that that could work. Weaver, the more I do think about it, the more I like where your head is at with the whole Sir'Jabari Rice thing. I think that start there and see where his game goes, because he's got more time to develop here. But all in all, I'm still of the mindset that we need to find a grad transfer in the portal to start at the 3.
Yeah, it would be nice. I think the roster is in good position right now, but you could put yourself over the top into that, top 7 type team going into next year if you can get a starting caliber 3-man.
Yeah, you're interesting you mentioned that. Most of the updated preseason top 30s or top 40, everyone's got a different number that I've seen. Texas is around that 10 to 15 mark. that we were talking about a little, or I think a video or two ago when we were talking about if they could land. We literally haven't landed any of those transfer targets we were talking about, but we got Dillon Mitchell back, so that was something
Yeah.
that helped. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess to revert back a little bit, my starting five right now is A. Smith, Hunter, TVD at the three, because I think that Cunningham and Weaver are best served coming off the bench to start the season. I would like to see us add someone out of the portal, a good grad transfer. There's going to be someone. There's going to be someone capable of either being a slashing, switchable two-way wing or a at least mediocre 3-and-D wing, someone that can shoot like 35, 36% from deep. Like maybe a PJ Tucker-esque that you can put in the corners. I know PJ Tucker was a lot better than mediocre. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But, that sort of thing. At the four, Dillon Mitchell. At the five, Dylan Dessou. I think that's where we're in agreement.
Yeah.
I still, that still leaves me. What are they gonna? What, did they sell Shedrick on coming off the bench? That's
Yeah,
not
I
what
don't
I.
know. I mean, even before Mitchell announced he was returning, we had conversations about is a Shedrick Dissou lineup going to work? And I still have my questions with that. I think they will play a little bit together, but I don't think it's going to be more than 10 minutes per game.
Yeah,
Um, I don't really like that fit in general. So, and when he committed, he had to know that I think had Dissou already announced he was coming back. I'm not sure, but even if he didn't, he had to know. He had to definitely have an inkling.
he hadn't yet when we landed.
Okay.
It was like pretty close together
Okay.
though that happened. Last part of this video. Remaining roster needs. I've heard they're still going after one or two portal guys. I did an article recently on some interesting international prospects, but like I don't know if them really. I don't even think that Texas has really dug too deep into that option beyond. I think I saw them offer one Canadian or think about offering one Canadian kid, or like maybe
Okay.
they did offer. That was a couple months ago, and I don't think anything ever came of that. My understanding is they're still looking for a more of a long-term developmental guard, and that they're still looking for a little bit more length in the backcourt. Sounds like more of a proven wing or two guard grad transfer. So, what are you looking for? What
Yeah.
I mentioned what I'd want.
Yeah. So I know you're big on getting that three, a guy who can come in and start at the small forward. I think even more important is to get that another guard because we have A. Smith, Hunter, and Weaver. But besides those three, like the other six guys who are on scholarship are, either like bigger wings. I mean, they're pretty much all forwards. So I think getting a fourth guard, whether that's a guy who, really won't contribute a ton this year, but just to have him as is going to be massive because let's say one of these guys goes down for a couple weeks and then Weaver comes into the starting lineup. Like who are even at this rate right now, A. Smith and Hunter are going to be playing like 32, 34 minutes a game. So one injury, one little issue, and even just foul trouble game, and you're going to be hurting at the guard position. So I think it's important that Texas does add someone who can at least bring the ball up and run an offense. That's a guy like Devin Askew. Obviously, it's not going to be Askew, but a guy like Devin Askew would be what I'm looking for. And, not even necessarily a former 5-star, but just someone who's competent, plays pretty good defense, can run an offense, is a decent point guard, and can just come in and stabilize some things when your stars need a rest. Because right now that does scare me. If you started with the tournament in November, then I think you'd be fine because you could run with A. Smith, Hunter, and Weaver as a 3-guard rotation, but that's not going to work for a 36-game season.
Here's where my mindset's at for that, and then I think that's enough for today on this subject. But I think the reason why I'm prioritizing in my own mind wing so much is that there's a limited supply of capable starting wings to fill what Texas needs. I will say, God, I mean, in terms of like if the season started tomorrow, yes, there's options. We could start at the three. The the guard rotation is not deep enough. It needs to be deeper. That is a more pressing need overall. I just think in terms like supply and demand, in today's portal universe.
Definitely some RT haters out there when the offseason first started. I'll say this to end yet another video, but we mentioned when we were talking, potentially four of the starters going into the season are going to be guys on last year's team. And given what was lost via eligibility, pretty crazy. I think Morris and Brumball were gone, regardless. And for RT to keep Hunter and Mitchell out of the draft, while also adding a solid portal class, says a lot about him. And that staff's coming together. And I think Texas basketball is just trending upwards.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for what he's been given, RT has done a nice job recruiting out of the portal and recruiting his own players back. So I agree with you there. But anyway, for Andrew Miller, Shane Black, Hook'emHeadlines.com, that's pretty much it. Welcome.
Welcome.